Simply, what does it mean to be the world's richest man? What is it to have all that power and buy Navajo land?
Valley of the Gods, to be precise.
West Taros will not get our land. Our gods will never allow it.
Hello everyone, this is David Stark from WatcherPass.com, your website for movie news, reviews, interviews, deals, and recommendations. Today we are joined by award-winning Polish director Lech Majewski. He's the director of such films as The Mill and the Cross, I'm going to butcher this, so I'm sorry, Wojciech, and The Garden of Earthly Delights. Today we're going to talk about his new surreal movie, The Valley of the Gods. It's a very interesting movie. It has three branching storylines that all intertwine in various conflicting ways, and it stars Josh Hartnett, John Malkovich, Jaime Newman, and Bérénice Marlohe. So, like, this movie it's already been shown in some festivals. It's won the Director's Award. Was this movie always scheduled to be kind of released direct to on demand and Blu-ray, or is that something that happened as a result of COVID? Was it supposed to continue touring the circuit?
Well, it's pretty much, I would say COVID made it, I mean, for this film and many other films, it went directly to the release on the platform and to be sold as a Blu-ray and DVD. That's a new reality that we're living in. So I was scheduled to open it in various countries, but it was starting in March, and actually in March we had the COVID. So everything now is spreaded depending on the status quo of the health situation in given country. But many countries have bought this movie, and so actually in a week I'm going to Netherlands to promote the movie.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, this movie, you know, it seems like a film that you would want to see in theaters because it has these just amazing visuals, but I guess the benefit of having it go kind of directly to Blu-ray and to on demand is, you know, I appreciated this film a lot more the second time watching it. I think, you know, maybe I just didn't understand it as much the first time. So you get that opportunity to kind of rewatch it and get new insights into the characters. So it's something we're hearing more from films having to pivot, and I'm glad that this one seems to be working. You mentioned it's an international film, so you know this is one of the films that is just not going to have appeal in America. It's going to appeal all over. Where else is this film kind of releasing, and what has the reception been like?
Well, it starts its life right now, so you cannot ask me right now about
that's valid. Sorry.
Because I do everything to avoid I don't read the reviews, and I don't check what is the status quo of my movies. I sort of, once I finish the movie, I turn my back on it and I move into a new direction. So I'm not looking back. I don't want to be frozen and petrified, made into a stone like Lot's wife.
Yeah.
I am not looking back, or like Eurydice when she was living in Hades. I mean, that's my motto in life, but I am inevitably getting all sorts of people calling me or writing to me, and it has a strange, intense impact on various people, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But please don't ask me this question, because I cannot be a judge of my own movie, so I cannot be also whatever I'll say. I mean, as Oscar Wilde said, I mean, if you any positive things said by the perpetrator stinks. So.
That's a very fair answer, and yeah, that makes perfect sense. So in this film, you are the writer, director, and producer. I'm very curious about kind of what inspired this film. So And I guess starting from the writing side, where did you get the idea? I mean, there's aspects of Native American lore, there's aspects of Egyptian lore, there's all these interesting conflicts. Where did this idea come from? And I guess what was your process for writing it?
It started all in the company called Propaganda Films. It used to be a company that produced all the David Lynch's The Wild at Heart and Twin Peaks, and I was preparing there a movie called Gospel According to Harry, which was a debut of Viggo Mortensen in the leading role.
Oh, wow.
And because the story of the Gospel According to Harry is that the Pacific has dried out and people are living in the dunes. And I was looking for a perfect desert that doesn't have any sign of life. And I got a location scout who specializes on the Western United States deserts. And he drove me everywhere to Valley of Death and Death Valley and to Monument Valley and to various national parks and to Salt Lake and to Black Rock Desert and Mojave. And on this voyage, we actually went to Valley of the Gods, and the landscape of Valley of the Gods made a tremendous impact on me. Anyhow, any southern Utah deserts are like, I had a sense that God has finished his creation 4 days ago. I mean, the landscapes were so amazing. I felt like the other feeling I had is that I am in the opening sequences of 2001 Space Odyssey, and the apes will come out of the nooks and crannies and will throw a bone that will fly up in the air. So this combined sense made me want to go back there, and I didn't understand it, but I'm an instinctive person. I'm a poet and a painter. I don't know what are the keys that actually make you move, but there are the keys. There are the hidden keys that make you move. So that landscape stayed with me very much so. And after many years, well, I prepared the Gospel According to Harry in '89, so, and in 2011, so let's say 21 years later, I was invited with the Mill and the Cross to the Sundance Film Festival. So I took a flight to Las Vegas, I rented a car, and I said, I'm gonna see Valley of the Gods once more time. It was winter, January. I drove through that valley, and you know, if you never were in this valley, this is a valley full of anthropomorphical shapes. The shapes, this is the bottom of the ancient ocean, despite the fact that it's 5,000 feet high above the sea level. But it's the bottom of the ancient ocean, and the erosion created these amazing shapes that look, there is a bunch of rocks that look like riders, like Navajo riders that go in a file, and you know, horses and riders, and they even have feathers on their head. It's just incredible. And also there's number of busts, enormous busts, and like heads of the chiefs. And there's a rock which looks like an eagle actually flying off the cliff. It's incredible. I mean, the shapes there are stunning. And for Navajo people, this is the place which is a favorite place for their ancestors to walk in. So they, at that time, 21 years ago, 31 by now years ago, there was a big write-up saying, please respect this place, don't throw litter here, just behave yourself and respect it. This is our ancestors here. So that was very, for me, important. And then I started to learn about Navajo culture. And because I am very much interested in mythologies, I found various similarities between the Navajo mythology and Anatolia, Hittites, an ancient tribe, which now it's in Turkey. They had a story about a rock that is growing up, a huge rock that grows in order to become an avenger. And I found a similar story in Navajo mythology, and it clicked with me. I like very much these ancient tales. And I discovered a beautiful culture. Navajo culture is just stunning. And their mythology is one of the most beautiful poetries you could imagine. And I knew nothing about it before. So I wanted to pay my respect to these people. Also, I met Navajo people and I spent with them wonderful time. And I realized how rich is their life comparing with the lives of us, the white people, who are so lonely and as we are, and abandoned, and we feel sorry for ourselves. And we think that the entire life is our life and nobody else's. Whereas when you talk with the Navajo people, you know that they are only a tiny chain in this flow of lives which creates their tribe. I mean, they communicate all the time with the ancestors. The ancestors come to them, tell them things to do. They also, like I spoke with a old Indian, a Navajo lady, and she was telling me that in her dream, her grandmother came and said that she was mistreating one of the Mustangs that she has for grazing on her grazing grounds, and that she was right about it, and that she had to go and say sorry to that Mustang. And she said to me that if I will have a granddaughter and she will do anything wrong to any of the horses, I will come to her like my grandmother came to me, and I will tell her that exactly like she did with me. It was one of the most beautiful moments in listening, because I realized there's no death among these people. There is this sense that you flow from one to the other, that you pass this baton or whatever it is called life, and you don't die. And if you spend time with the Navajo people, you see how rich is their spiritual life, as opposed to the material life, which is basic, very basic, and almost, I turn on the light here. Okay.
That looks fun. Perfect. Yeah, so I guess like you initially, I didn't know anything really about, the Navajo folklore or the Navajo history and whatnot. And you're hearing you describe it it sounds beautiful. I like that story. It shows that everything is connected. It's a very nice way of thinking about family and life. And, I think those themes do flow into this movie, obviously, because, you're inspired by it. So I guess that you said that was in 2011, roughly. How long?
When the Monument Valley called me, this was a call to duty. I mean, the Valley of the Gods told me, Lech, this is the time you have to do the movie. So I started to work on the screenplay. It took me 3 years, and also studying various things. And then I started to pre-produce the film and location scout and select the effect teams and starting to work on the backgrounds, 3-dimension spaces and things. Mm-hmm. It was a complicated task, and which we did on a limited amount of money, of course. and I didn't have $150 million for this. If I would tell you how much I had, you wouldn't believe, but I won't tell you.
That's fine. I'm impressed that you were able to make it in any way.
The other producers forbade me to tell. But it required a tremendous effort on the team that made the movie.
So it seems, maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, but it seems like maybe you were, John in the film was kind of similar to your character. He comes to Valley of the Gods, gets inspired, and starts writing. Is that one of the things that you viewed in his character, or was he just, completely made whole cloth from your ideas and inspiration from the Valley?
Well, there's always me in every character because you draw from your own experience. Also, when I was preparing Basquiat, that's the movie that ultimately Julian Schnabel directed, but it was my brainchild. And Basquiat was, I wrote the original story, I wrote the original book, I wrote the original screenplay. I found Julian Schnabel to cooperate with me on the dialogues. And going around among the collectors of Basquiat, I ventured into the houses of the richest people in the United States, multi-billionaires that have the modern art. And, I always, when I go to people who are so powerful, so rich, I always try to talk also about the sense of life that, apart from everything, what is this status quo allowing them to do, or trying to figure out these people, because everybody dreams of big money, or everybody wants to be rich, and ultimately, maybe it's banal what I will say, but they are human beings like everybody else, and you can buy many things, but you cannot buy happiness, you cannot buy your family, you cannot buy health. Ultimately, reality, no matter how much you want to prettify your surroundings and how much you want to put yourself onto a kind of a canvas of these wonderful things, cars and helicopters and yachts and airplanes and God knows castles and whatever, ultimately the core of it is you and me. I mean, they're humans, and they suffer and they long and they are looking for, and in fact their life is in many ways harder than our life, because usually they are in a vice of incredible pressure from every side. They running big empires or what have you, and as you know, they feel that they are the right people to run it, so they need to attend to almost every detail of it, or to most of the aspects of it, the strategy, the problems that are there. And at the same time, they don't have the private life, almost no private life. They cannot go out. You and I, we can go out to a shop, or we can go out into the street. We can do whatever we want to do.
You might be recognized, but me, definitely, I can go wherever I want.
Yeah, so nobody will follow us. Nobody will make our life miserable because we went out. And they have to watch themselves and watch their back and watch their kids and watch their close ones, because everybody can be kidnapped. Everybody can be a source of a trouble and a problem and what. So, my God, this is, and I wanted to tell this story in this story of the richest person in the world, and to clash with those who are poor outside, but inside very rich, and the opposite with the richest person in the world who is poor inside. Mm-hmm. So that's the clash, that the diapason between these two situations.
And speaking of clash, that is definitely a main theme. There seems to be so many conflicting themes in this movie that were just expertly made. You know, one of my favorite scenes is, you know, you've got they're hang gliding over this beautiful valley and just kind of overlooking all these perfectly manicured houses, and it's beautiful but also kind of sad at the same moment. And then there's definitely the you know, love versus loss, and technology versus tradition. Going to your point about the richest men, richest people, I guess, feeling you know, maybe being the saddest, it does seem like pretty much every character had some amount of personal loss in this film. Was that something that was kind of important to tie them all together, or was that just kind of how they developed as you were kind of seeing how these people would interact and what would bring them together?
Well, you said it. I mean, yes, absolutely. This is a film about love for me in the first instance, and about being poor, being rich, and what really is the name of being rich. And I guess this film tells the story of how important it is to have a good relationship and good spirit, so to say, as opposed to the riches, the external riches. It's very important what Malkovich has this speech in the end and says what he says. That is like a quintessence of what I wanted to say. And John delivered it in a wonderful way, and I think it's a very important scene for me, and it's very wise what he says in terms of, he also made it such a way. I don't know whether any other actor would deliver it the way he did. So yes, of course, this is about this. Also, symbolically, I try to tell that every separate story carries a story about a stone. Stone is like a symbol of the inner kernel, inner heart, inner center. You know, every new building has to have a cornerstone, or a stone that is kind of a almost like an egg that the building has to break from. Also, when we die, we covered with a stone. You know, in the Jewish religion, you have this matzeva, which people put stones on it. Stone is symbolically in ancient times is a carrier of our breath. That's a very strange thing. It's a petrified breath. And also that comes in the mythology of Navajo people. And therefore, in every story in this film, you will find that even there is a kidney stone, and there is a huge rock.
I didn't catch that the first time, like the connection there. So that was something I really enjoyed seeing the second time. One thing, speaking of some of these conflicts, one thing I noticed is, and you mentioned a little bit in the planning, you know, this film does use some CGI, and I think, you know, I'm just guessing, but some drones to get some of these beautiful shots. But the film also seems to kind of be at odds with technology, especially with some of the ways that the characters, you know, become creative and get close to nature. Was that, you know, I guess, where did that conflict come from? And is that, you know, something that maybe the technology developed as you were making the film and you became more accustomed to it? Or is that just something I'm trying to read too much into at this point?
Well, I love to use the Newman technology to use it in a grown-up way, not to use it as a comic background, comics background that Hollywood is using the new technology for. I think there are wonderful things to be told with the new technology, providing that this is done for grown-ups and not for the kids. Obviously, there is always a kid in every one of us, and especially those who love cinema. But it cannot be all kids. Everything is for kids. It cannot be the intellectual level of a 11-year-old. I mean, cinema has to break away from this tremendous disaster that happened with this ETs and other films that actually made the bosses of big studios aware that nothing brings that much money as kids fair, because not only that the kids want to see something 3 or 4 or 5 times, but they also bring the entire class with them and every imaginable friend, and also they bring the parents into the cinema. Whereas the grown-up films, they don't bring the kids for this film, so it's not such a good business. So the 70s killed the grown-up cinema in United States and in the world. Once the Star Wars and all these things started to happen, the grown-up cinema sort of died out in many ways. Obviously, there were exceptions and fantastic filmmakers, Martin Scorsese or others, but generally speaking, people were not queuing for Fellini movie or Antonioni movie anymore.
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because this does definitely feel like a very different film from maybe some of the more, I guess, for lack of a better word, mainstream movies. And you know, it seems like in this time, kids' movies are the ones that you hear about doing very well during the quarantine. So I think your point is taken that those are the ones that will draw a crowd over and over. Can we pivot quickly to the cast? Because I loved this cast. You know, seeing Josh Hartnett out there was great to see. I haven't really seen him in much recently. John Malkovich is always fantastic. Bérénice, Marlohe, and Jaime Ray Newman were both really, really wonderful to see. You know, I guess how did you find these people? And you know, when you were writing these characters, did these actors look like the characters you were thinking of when you were creating them, or did they kind of grow into those roles as they took them on?
Well, both, but generally speaking, as I said, I am drawing my characters, and I pretty much, if you would see the drawings that were predecessors to the casting, you would see similar features in these characters. And also, I like these people very much. I respect them. Bérénice Marlohe is a wonderful person. She writes poetry, she paints paintings. She is a virtuoso player on piano. She finished conservatory. She can give you a concert on the piano. So she's not only a beautiful woman, but she's also a very gifted person. And Keir Dullea was my dream to have in this movie the pilot of the spaceship that went to Jupiter in 2001 Space Odyssey. So it was my dream to have Keir Dullea. And since one of our co-producers is Ian Harlan, the producer of last 5 movies of Stanley Kubrick, we got Keir Dullea into our movie, and I have to tell you, this was for me a magic moment. And he told me,
fortuitous.
Yeah, and he told me that he actually entered on our set exactly to the date, 50 years after, exactly 50 years after he entered the set of Stanley Kubrick for the Space Odyssey.
That's so poetic.
Yeah. And and he celebrated his 30th birthday when he was working on Stanley Kubrick, and 80th birthday when he was working on our film. So I like those moments. Let's say they're not that important for the film, but I think they are important for me as a filmmaker. They're very important.
Well, yes, and you know, it's your film, so that, you know, finding these happy moments are great to help you, you know, move you on and help you remember them. As the writer,
there's also John Rhys-Davies, who is a fantastic Shakespearean actor, and he was in Lord of the Rings. He was in Riders of the Lost Ark. I mean, John Rhys-Davies is a great actor, and he also was part of the team.
Yeah, they were. It was a really, really fantastic cast, and that kind of leads into my next question. As you know, as the writer and the director of this film, you know, I imagine the script had a very specific dialogue, but you had these fantastic actors that really seemed to, you know, personify these characters. Did they adhere more to your script, or did you kind of allow them to explore their characters and change the dialogue? I'm just curious, as a, you know, as someone who wrote the dialogue as well, how strict was that boundary?
Well, it's never strict with me, because I enjoy the input of the others. I mean, there's always something good that can happen with a new person and a fresh look at the text. And also, when you rehearse prior to the shooting, you see how dreadful the dialogue was and how to avoid this verbose ways of saying things which are being seen on the set, and you don't need to name it. You don't need to, you know, when you write your dialogues, you don't really, you always have a slight suspicion that you're missing something, and so you want to overexpose it in words. And when you have actors, and good actors like I had, and they start to act these things, you see that half of the dialogue can go away, because it's all in their faces, or it's there in the space.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad that you brought up the verbose dialogue. One of my biggest pet peeves in movies is when, you know, there will be a long statement or some sort of realization that the audience can all come to that realization together, but then the character just feels the need to say it again, say it out loud, spell it out. And I hate when I see that, because like we all got that conclusion. And your film, I think, is on the opposite end of that, where there's so much left unsaid that is kind of left up to the viewers to come to these conclusions and make these connections, which was it was fun to watch, and one of the reasons I appreciated it a lot more on my second viewing than my first. You mentioned
also, if I may say something about my approach to the story. Once I learn the mythology of Navajo people, and I entered their world, and I was witness to what they told me and how they perceive the world, I figured out that I wanted to have that kind of a language in the film. Mm-hmm. So there is a certain set of mysteries in their stories. They don't straighten out everything. There's like a hidden knowledge in it. And I employed this into the storytelling of the Valley of the Gods. And funnily enough, when they saw the film, they told me, Lech, this is the first film told from our point of view. There were films about us, like Wind Talkers or other films. It was a white man's eye. And Lech, are you Navajo?
That is quite the compliment. That's amazing. Yeah, those characters it did feel very authentic. There was a lot, you know, the lore, obviously, the characters, the settings, they all felt, you know, like you were there, which was must have been a nice feeling for them. Must have been a nice feeling for you as well.
Very much so.
You mentioned earlier that you took a tour of very rich places for one of your earlier films. One of the things I was curious about is Wes's Mansion was just, it kind of blew my mind with some of the scenes of opulence that they had in there. You know, was that something that you saw in your earlier tours? Is it something that you found, or is it something you kind of composited based on things that you'd seen before? You know, specifically that badminton scene was, I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful shot. And you know, just seeing
Which one?
They're playing badminton in that. It looks like almost like a church with the statues and the painting. You know, that was
right.
So I guess, you know, where did you come up with this mansion? Is it someplace that you scouted, or is it something that you created? You know, I was very curious about that.
Well, it's pretty much created in this space. Yes, it is created, and but also, as I said, I know the interiors of the Polish castles, and we have fantastic interiors here in Poland. And I use them, and I use them to create this abode of the richest man in the world. Because when I was visiting Xanadu, or I went to Randolph William Hearst place, I saw that the way he built his house, he was also on top of the mountain, and every room is almost different. And he has brought from Europe anything that he could buy. It's a little bit like in Citizen Kane. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has brought, let's say, a piece of a Spanish ceiling, but it was only like 6 by 3 feet. And so he found handcrafting people who extended that piece of ceiling into the entire room. So he was trying to have the Renaissance and the Gothic and the English castle and the French palace, and he tried to combine the best of the world in his house. That was William Randolph Hearst. And that kind of, I want to have the entire universe in one place. I want to have, this is the same underlying theme in Las Vegas. You don't need to go to Paris. You don't need to go to Venice. You don't even need to go to Rome. We have everything here. We have Caesar's Palace. We have also New York here and Monte Carlo. So don't go there, just come to Las Vegas. So this is the sense that I find that the rich people, they want to recreate a miniature of the best of the world. I want to eat the best food. I want to drink the best booze. I want to have the best interiors that I've seen in the world or there are in the world. And I want to have the best art to decorate it. And this is for me, this was the theme, how to build the household of the zillionaire played by John Malkovich.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that they were Polish castles, because that actually answers another question I had. I was able to email with Bérénice Marlohe, and she said that, I asked, how was it seeing Valley of the Gods? What would it feel like? And she's like, I've seen pictures. It looks very nice, because she mentioned she never actually went there. And I guess that explains it, because all of her scenes were in the castles. I have one more question before moving to the lightning round. And this is a question I asked.
Poor Bérénice, we were shooting her on green screen, and then she found it.
she had nothing but good things to say. She loved working with you. But one thing I asked her, and I'll ask you as well, when I saw this, I got a lot of David Lynchian kind of vibes. In my review, I called it an art house film with Lynchian vibes in it. And you mentioned that this film was kind of, you started thinking of it when you were working with a company that worked with David Lynch. Was David Lynch kind of a influence in this film, or is that just because you two are both very kind of artistic directors that are interested in lore and dialogue and things like that? Is it just kind of a coincidence? It's perfectly fine if it wasn't. It was just something that I picked up, but maybe that's just my...
No, I love his work, but I think mine is quite different. And my inspiration is more of an Italian. I have a special love for Antonioni and Fellini and Pasolini. These are my masters. Mm-hmm. Early Bertolucci. I mean, these are the masters that I respect. I think I have an Italian spirit in me.
So you have an Italian spirit. You have you're part Navajo now. You can hang with the rich people. You're a Renaissance man.
by the description of the Navajo people.
So I'd like to move quickly into, I call it the lightning round, but it's just either things that happened in the movie that I want to see if you've also done, or just, things that the characters do that I wanted to see how your reaction would be. They're just quick questions. You can answer as much or as little as you want. Some of them are silly. So I guess the first question is, have you ever been hang gliding?
No.
Okay. that was a fun looking scene. Have you ever been rock climbing?
No.
What would you name your biography? Or, unless you already have one written, I'm not sure.
Yes, there is a biography of me called Intimate Landscape. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to name it.
Maybe modern surrealist would be a good answer for it.
Well, there was a critic in Washington Post when I had my retrospective at the Smithsonian and at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. He wrote, Lech Majewski is a surreal McCoy.
That's a good name for it. Perfect. We'll use that. If you were to write your biography, where would you do it? Would you go out into nature like John did, or?
Well, I'm not. I mean, everything that I'm doing is my biography, but indirect.
That's fair. When you're a writer, are you a computer person or a pen and paper?
Initially, I am pen, like you have in the movie. The blue blood is the ink in the pen. So there is even a chapter in the movie called The Blue Blood. So I am a pen and paper person, but ultimately everything ends up in a computer, and then you refine everything in the computer.
It was interesting to see, someone write with a nice pen. You just don't really see much of that anymore. So that was a fun scene to see. Is your ideal home in the city or out in nature?
It used to be city all the time, but now I'm sort of more and more starving for nature.
And is that because you're cooped up because of lockdown, or is that?
No, because the cities became less magic, lost its magic to me.
And so I guess
become more of a tourist traps and sort of lost its originality. Also, there is this unifying look of everything. They're the same shopping malls, the same franchises everywhere. It just, in many cities, if I would blindfold you and sort of give you a sleeping pill and transport it into various places and cover the language in which the shops are called, you wouldn't find a difference between being in 20,000 miles away where you are right now. I mean, it's the same. I won't use this word, but everywhere. It just, and it doesn't look too good. It's I used to travel through Europe not many years ago, but well, many years ago, let's say 50 years ago, and 40 years ago. And going from one country to another country, you were entering very different cultures. Very different shops, very different food, very different, everything was different. Now, everything is the same, more and more. The music, the what they play on the radio, what they play in the restaurants, what they give as food, it's everywhere the same. And also, if you go and buy clothes or you buy food, it's just everywhere the same.
That's an astute observation, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The blindfolding and taking you to a new city is very right. Everything does have kind of a similar set of stores and experiences and things like that.
And shopping malls and the way the logistic goes about it, and it's the cinemas are exactly. Cinemas used to be palaces, And the architects used to build fantastic theaters to show movies. And also the theaters were palaces. I mean, now every cinema looks the same. It's a part of a shopping mall.
Yeah, well, no, they're closed right now, but you're correct. I think they try to make it so that everyone has the same experience, but then you kind of lose some of the, the personality that they.
I think the COVID is a battle between the new money and old money. Is the new money has won the battle against the old money. The old money in the entertainment business were the owners of the theaters, were the distributors of the films, were the studios. And the new money is the internet, the platforms, and they won. And it's done deal.
Yeah, it has definitely been interesting to see everything pivot towards streaming and the internet in this time.
Yeah.
So I guess going back to your yearning for nature, what is your favorite natural spot? Is it the Valley of the Gods? Is there somewhere else that you really like to visit?
Well, I have various. I couldn't point one. Maybe Katowice would be one. I mean, the city I was born. But I love Venice, and Venice is my second home. I used to live in Venice for many years. Also, I used to spend every holiday in Venice, in Italy. Because my uncle was teaching at the conservatory there. He was a professor of composition. And he lived in Milan, and for the summer, his academic house was empty. So we as a poor family from Poland were using that house for the holiday. So I used to be a Venetian, really. And I know Venice like no other city, especially because Venice doesn't change, doesn't develop. It's like frozen in time. But I love Utah, south of Utah, the Navajo country. This is my place. But there are many beautiful places in the world.
It's a very good answer. One of the themes that is also kind of explored in this movie is, people having alternate personas. Maybe their public persona and then a private persona. Feel free not to answer, but do you have kind of a public persona, a private persona, or a double? I think is what they called it in the movie.
You're watching it.
This is the real you.
My private persona you saw on the screen.
Okay.
Now you're watching my public persona.
And then one thing I noticed in the Navajo bar, Pepsi was prominently featured. Is that a personal preference? Was there any reason that it was specifically a Pepsi that they ordered, and the Pepsis that were showcased?
No, this is exact recreation of my first venture into a Navajo bar 30 years ago. There was a ramshackle bar, and the location scout that was showing me the deserts, western deserts. We entered a place like this one that you have in the film. And there was a shelf. On the shelf, you had a small TV that was playing, and 3 bottles of Pepsi and 3 cans of Dr. Pepper. And this is exactly straight from my memory of 30 years ago, entering that place. And the funny thing, or the strange thing, was that we ordered this Pepsi or whatever we ordered. We took it to the table, we sat down, and during our stay there, which was like 15 up to 20 minutes, the Navajo people, the men that were there, they didn't move. They didn't blink. They didn't breathe. They didn't look at us. They froze.
That was something that struck me about that scene. So I guess now I know why they were like that.
And they were waiting until we leave. And it was very, I mean, the combined energy of them was throwing us out the door.
Oh, I think that maybe that's changed now that you're welcomed by the Navajo people.
Yeah, that did change, but they're very suspicious, and I don't blame them because they didn't get much good out of the strangers.
So I guess if you had to choose, are you Pepsi or Coke, or is there some other soda that you drink?
I like a non-alcoholic beer.
It's a good choice. And then I guess so you mentioned that now that this film is out, you're not looking at this film, you're kind of thinking about the future. I guess what is next for you, if you can say, or if not, I'm just curious to see what the.
Well, I'm working on a movie which is kind of it's called the Brigitte Bardot Miraculous, and it's about the youth in Poland and our love for Brigitte Bardot and all the magical people who used to be idols then, like the Beatles and Simon Templar and what have you. They all come into my movie.
That sounds like a fun film. If it comes out here, I'll be happy to see it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for spending your evening with me. It's been enlightening. I'm very happy to have this conversation because as I mentioned, watching this film, there's so much symbolism, so much imagery, so much that is kind of left unsaid. That's great to kind of hear your thoughts. So do you have any other last thoughts or about the film or the process? Or
no, I'm curious how it will fare in present day America.
I'm curious as well. Yeah, I'm curious as well. I'm not sure. Everything is kind of new in this whole COVID time. So I think this might be a film that would have been interesting to see at some of the independent film theaters. And now that everything is streaming, anyone can watch it. So I'm curious as well. I guess we'll all find out.
Yeah.
The film is Valley of the Gods. It's being released by Wellgo USA. It's available on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital. The director is Lech Majewski. He's a fantastic director. He's an artist and a surrealist. And thank you so much for your time. Check out the film. Check out his past films. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye. That was Lech Majewski, who wrote, directed, and produced the all-new movie, The Valley of the Gods. It's out on digital, Blu-ray, and DVD. It's an artistic movie. It's a surreal movie. It deals with a lot of interesting, conflicting themes, and it's definitely one that you'll probably want to watch a couple times. If you like that interview and you want to see more interviews from us, please like and subscribe. The information at the end of the video and also in the description. And as always, please go to watcherpass.com for all your movie news, reviews, interviews, deals, and recommendations. Thank you.